Hey y'all, it's Possumbreath, but you can call me PB for short. I figured that 6k followers was high time to do a little Q&A, so I put out the call on my community page for folks to send me questions, and boy did you all deliver. To get some basic things out of the way, I am a bisexual trans man, my pronouns are he, him, his, and I am turning 30 in February. I know, I'm old. I live with my partner, who you can call Griffin, and whose pronouns are she, they. We've been together for almost 10 years now. We also have 2 cats, Moko and Josephine. Moko is an old man that Griffin has had since they were a little kid, and Josephine is a younger kitty we adopted together in 2019. I didn't go to art school. I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology. Art for me is a therapeutic hobby rather than a career goal. And on that note, I can't begin to tell you how good this channel has been for my mental health. I have drawn more since I started drawing cats than I have in the past 10 years combined. Speaking of this channel, I posted about this elsewhere, but I'll say it again here. Several of you have asked for a way to send me fan art, so I've set up a Gmail account just for that. You can send fanworks to possumbreathofficial@gmail.com. Right now, I have no plans to make a Discord. I don't have the time or energy it would take to moderate one, and I'm not going to create an online space if I'm not sure I can make it one that is safe and well maintained. As your goofy art uncle, part of my responsibility is making sure I'm being responsible with how I interact with you, and also with looking after my own mental health. And I think where I'm at right now, a Discord would be more anxiety-inducing than it would be fun for any of us. If this ever changes, you'll be the first to know, I promise. With all the obvious stuff out of the way, let's get into your questions. IH92, the March Bunny Madness, and Call Me Trig wanted to know how I started art as a whole, if there are any particular artists that inspire me, and what my childhood dream was. These are all related, I promise. I grew up with 2 artist parents, so I was always encouraged to pursue my own art. I also grew up relatively unsupervised and with only local channels, back in the day when TVs still had antennas. I watched a lot of Bob Ross and nature documentaries on PBS, and I did a lot of reading and movie watching. I had to keep myself entertained. I was particularly influenced by the various works of Brian Froud, especially his books Trolls and Fairies, and his work with Jim Henson on Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. I was also incredibly fond of the work of James C. Christensen, who I was introduced to by his gorgeous illustrations for the book Voyage of the Basset. I loved any piece of media that tried to apply science to magical things. My favorite movie as a child was Flight of Dragons, and I loved how they explained how the dragons worked in addition to the unique and charming Rankin Bass visual style, that you all probably know a little bit better from Last Unicorn. I was also hugely inspired by the book Pagoo, which is a book about the life cycle of a hermit crab, but with accurate biological art and field notes in the margins. I would trace over art from this book constantly, trying to capture the weird wiggly shapes of the deep-sea creatures. All this coalesced into a childhood dream of being a nature researcher. I would not just design my own magical beasts, I would draw field notes. I would buy fishing lures, you know those plastic ones that look kinda like squid, and write detailed notes about them as though they were various alien species. I made up their biology, their diet, their life cycle, as seriously as though I were really observing a species in the wild. Now, as an adult, I still have a deep and abiding love of nature, and am imagining my own little worlds and societies. You can imagine why something like Warriors, which is so open to that kind of creativity, really caught my attention. I also learned to appreciate art that is not, perhaps, traditionally pretty all the time. I loved Froud's little guys, and Christensen's odd proportions, and Rankin Bass's wrinkle-heavy and whimsical characters. It taught me that I wanted to make art and characters that were interesting, not art and characters that were pretty, and I've kept that goal my whole life. In terms of artists I follow now, I'm a big fan of Felix Colgrave. If you haven't already seen his delightful art and animations, please go give them a look on his YouTube channel. You won't regret it. Vixels and Soot wanted to know my feelings on fungi. And they're pretty straightforward. I love a mushroom. I love a mushroom to eat. I love a mushroom to gaze lovingly at. I think fungus is some of the coolest life on our planet, and it's criminally underrated. Yeet Backup Animations had some questions that are definitely not dumb. They want to know what is my favorite color, what my favorite animal is, and what season is my favorite. My favorite color is green, closely followed by orange, and my favorite season is fall. I love the crisp air, and I think the trees look prettiest when they're turning brown and red and gold. My favorite animal is hard, so I'm gonna go with my favorite animal to tell people about, because I couldn't pick an overall favorite otherwise. Warning, this section will include pictures of some weird looking worms. Skip ahead to the next section if you don't want to see that. Have you ever heard of hammerhead worms, also known as bipalium? They're invasive in a lot of parts of the world, and they're big old cannibalistic planarians who are considered pests because they prey on the smaller and less cool-looking earthworms. Some even secrete neurotoxin. They come in lots of neat patterns and colors, and like to just sort of squidge along looking pretty and dangerous. I love all of them. They are forbidden gummy worms. Yip Yap, Hush Bowman, and Alien Boy wanted to know how I came up with my YouTube OC. And the answer is actually pretty funny. I'm a small person, I overheat easily, and I'm also a massive furry. As much as I'd love to own a fursuit one day, a full bodysuit with all the padding that requires is just not in the cards for me. It would weigh more than I do. So I designed Doc primarily to work as a partial suit. Just a head, arm socks, tail, and potentially feet. Admittedly, I made him specifically to work well in the style of fleece rot. I've never seen anyone else do such stylistic suits, and the dedication to making the characters lumpy and ugly and weird instead of the usual furry, cutesy, soft look really appealed to me. Not that there's anything wrong with being cutesy and soft, but cutesy and soft isn't for me, and it wouldn't work well for Doc either. I actually designed him in a 4-hour fugue state one night, and while his design has been streamlined and updated since, he's changed relatively little overall. Mostly his tail has just got much bigger. It pretty much gets longer every time I draw it, and the mane on his head is filled out. Also, I see your second question, Hush Bowman, and the answer is, I don't know yet, but when I do, you will all be the first to get a link. Cuddlefish Chaos wanted to know if I could have any pet, what would it be, and also if there's any other fandoms I'm into besides warriors. To answer the first question, guinea pigs. A big ol' herd of guinea pigs that I can set loose in the garden and watch run around and nibble on the grass and be cute. They are perfectly soft and sized for holding in one's hands, and they have a ton of personality. I don't have a yard at present, so this is a future dream, but one day I will, and then my neighbors will have to put up with my piggy horde. As for other fandoms I'm interested in, that ties into our next questions. The Flaming Phoenix and Copa Tails want to know how I came up with my name. And I'll just let the clip speak for itself.
That's when Possumbreath over here shows up.
It's really that simple. Gravity Falls has been what I'd consider my main fandom for quite some time now. And if you look a little further back on my channel, you can see a lot of videos related to it. I think it's a great show. It told its story in 2 seasons with pretty decent pacing and great foreshadowing that makes rewatching it a joyful little scavenger hunt. And it doesn't talk down to its young audience, and it is genuinely scary in places, but in a way that is fun and age-appropriate. Every character is neat and interesting, though obviously my Bloro is Mr. Possumbreath himself. Otherwise, I generally don't do big fandom anymore. My foray into Warriors posting is the most active I've been in a fandom since I was in high school. If I tell you I used to be in Harry Potter fandom and then Homestuck fandom, you'll understand why. I get war flashbacks just thinking about it. Now I prefer to quietly enjoy things in my own little corner with my friends, rather than with a huge group of strangers who I can't necessarily trust to be chill. Some other pieces of media besides Warriors that I've been into recently include Psychonauts, Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, Hilda, BoJack Horseman, and F is for Family. Those last 2 are intended for an older audience and tackle some pretty dark subjects, so don't go looking them up unless you're okay with that kind of content. To be crystal clear, though, my experience so far with the Warriors fandom has been incredibly positive, and I'm honestly floored at how kind and encouraging you all have been since my channel blew up. I'm glad that when I decided to come back to major fandom, this is the one I chose, and I can foresee myself staying here for a long time. Juliana Moore 123 More and CityCat wanted to know how I joined the Warriors community and what book I'm on. So when the panorama started, and we were all suddenly cooped up inside, I dealt with it by joining the animation community on YouTube. I figured learning how to animate would be a great use of my time and keep me occupied. And as you probably all know, you can't be in the animation community on YouTube without being forcibly dragged into Warrior Cats. Every other multi-animator project is cat-based, and many of them are absolute masterpieces. I couldn't help but get interested in a series that had so many people that loved it enough to make that kind of beautiful art about it. I started reading the books with my partner's old physical copy of The Sight, read through all of Power of Three and Omen of the Stars, and then skipped backward to the first series when it finally became available on my library's ebook rotation. I haven't read all the books, and I honestly don't plan to. There's nearly 100 of the things, and I'm old and tired, and frankly the fandom does a better job conveying the story than the Erins do. Forgetful Cupid wants to know what my favorite canon warrior cat character is, and this one is easy. Jingo. Jingo is my favorite character. And I know you're saying, what? The cat who shows up for like 2 chapters in the middle of Sunrise? Yeah. I think her situation is more compelling than half the main canon conflicts. She was tricked and taken advantage of by Saul, and now is in charge of this battered group of ex-kitty pets that she has to take care of because nobody else can. She wants to return to her housefolk, and she can't because she has a duty to these cats, and it's heartbreaking. And also honestly infuriating that she shows up and is introduced in the middle of this awful situation, and then never gets any kind of closure whatsoever. I am a one-man Jingo fan club. She's the best leader in the series. If you made me pick a clan cat though, I'd probably say Hollyleaf. I think her arc as a character is fascinating and really tragic. And admittedly, my favorite character types are has a big crisis of faith, and or does really bad things for what they think are justified reasons. She hits both of those out of the park. I also really like Longtail, and I don't have any good reason for it. I just like to rotate that stinky boy in my head at mock speeds. Killycat and Endeavor want to know what my favorite cat breed is, and this one's also pretty easy. I love me a naked Bingus kitty. If you couldn't tell already, I like odd and interesting looking things, and there's nothing more odd or interesting than a little naked Sphinx gremlin. I probably will never own one, but I could admire them from afar. Side note, in my Gravity Falls and Warrior Cats crossover AU, Bill Cipher's a Sphinx cat. Twick, or Twig, unsure, hopefully one of those is correct, wanted to know if I'll do Let's Plays in the future. And I hadn't planned on it. I honestly am discovering, through ClanGen, the game, that the way Let's Plays need to be recorded really kills my interest in a game. Having to stop and start constantly just makes me want to stop permanently. I'm the kind of person who mainlines a game to get that hyperfixation serotonin. I got Perfection in Stardew Valley about a month after buying it, and I'm only missing 2 achievements, the Prairie King ones, to give you an idea of the kind of guy I am. So if I ever do game content, it will probably be one-off stuff only, like a Stardew Valley farm tour or an Animal Crossing Island tour. What does this mean for the future of ClanGen and Mug Clan Clan? I'm not sure at present. But the truth is, I really enjoy making art and character videos a lot more than gameplay. So I'm probably going to focus on that going forward and put Mug Clan Clan on the back burner, or reevaluate how I do the series. And finally, Bread wants to know what flavor of waffle would I be? And I actually have an answer for this. In the town I grew up in, there's a restaurant called Off the Waffle, and they specialize in fancy artisan waffles. And I would be a goat in the headlights, which is a savory waffle with egg, goat cheese, and avocado, among other things. Super tasty. There were also a lot of questions about my art process, what program I use, how I handle particular parts of design, and don't you worry, I didn't forget you. I'm still working on a whole video to address exactly that, all on its own, going over my general process and tips and tricks that help me with my art, and might help you with yours. So look out for that sometime in the future. In the meantime, the first half of the Sage Clan cats are drawn, so get ready to meet them soon. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time.